Hi everybody, it's Nick Bradshaw here. Just starting things up on the PowerPoint. A little bit slow at my end here, so I hope you guys can see the title slide. Just by way of an introduction, we're just going to go through a couple of points about AI media, what we're doing in the landscape here in the Africa region regarding 4IR and the trade community that we've developed. And what I'll do is I'll just go through these slides, talk a little bit about the community, what we're trying to achieve, some of the vision and aims that we have, and then we'll move on to the buyer survey. The buyer survey is a living survey, and it's going to be running for the next month or so. And really, it's something we put together in the run-up to AI Expo Africa. And it's something that we're actually going to share with delegates and sponsors that join the show, and of course anybody that takes part in the survey will get a copy of the final results. So who is AI Media? I just wanted to kind of baseline everybody who's on this call a brief understanding about AI Media, the AI Media Group, and what we're doing. So essentially, the AI Media Group is a hybrid media consulting and events business, and we're specifically focused on the fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence and related technologies in a B2B trade environment. So we're very much focused around running events that bring buyers and suppliers together, creating media and content which has relevant insights to our community. We also provide organizations that want to learn more about the environment here in our region and what's happening with analysis. We're routinely asked to connect people up in the industry, and we obviously are building a community. So far, our community has reached 3,500 in number, and it's steadily growing. So all of this has happened over the last 2 years. We originally formed the business in 2017 when we realized there really wasn't a community that was focused on the business needs of the fourth industrial revolution and AI RPA landscape. There was lots of technical groups, but there was no business groups. So we essentially set that up. In terms of, just going on to the next slide, our vision and mission is really to build the largest trade and innovation focused community in Africa. And we want to try and be a catalyst to foster greater collaboration between industry, academia, government and investors, mainly because we see a much broader picture in terms of growing economic opportunity here, and we routinely talk about our 6 kind of themes. We're involved in connecting people, sharing knowledge, fostering innovation, helping educate people about what's going on in the industry, supporting government and other industry bodies, and hopefully them supporting us as we go on this journey together. And also the final theme and main business focus is business commerce. We want buyers to find suppliers, we want suppliers to find buyers, we want innovators to find investors, we want more startups to come into the community, and we want to try and bring all of that together under one umbrella. And we call that, what we coined a phrase, the AI economic pipeline, or the fourth industrial revolution economic pipeline. Essentially, it starts with people at one end of the spectrum here in Africa, in previously disadvantaged communities. It goes through going through the education system, further education system, getting into higher academic research, if that's something that appeals to people, getting into entrepreneurism, building businesses, and then taking that right through to the enterprise and larger global corporates. So underpinning that is a lot of other activities that we are trying to get involved in or initiate. We had plans this year for a township AI event, talking to various stakeholders about how we can get people at the left-hand side of the spectrum more involved in the fourth industrial revolution. And then at the other end of it, we are talking to provincial, national government, governments in other countries about how we can help connect the ecosystem. And then organizations outside of Africa, people like the ITU in Geneva, the World Economic Forum, we've been doing various different liaison and knowledge exchange with those kinds of organizations, so they get a better view about what's going on in our region. And then really what we're trying to do is have both what we call an inward and outward view of the world. So we want to try and foster inward interest in our region, whether that's at the local level, national level, or continental level, and then ultimately the globe. And then equally turning that on its head is fostering the idea that as organizations, we can sell to a global market. So startups that are coming up with new and innovative technologies, how can we help them promote their technologies to a much broader audience, obviously starting local and then branching out. So we talk to many different organizations about how we can achieve that. Had a lot of dialogue at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, with Western Cape government, for example, here close to home in Cape Town, which is where we're based. We've been talking to the Gauteng government in Pretoria. We've been talking to people in Ghana, Kenya, Tunisia, and so how can we look at improving both inward and outward activity? We also are very interested in helping bridge the gap between academia and entrepreneurism. The education system churns out educated people, which hopefully can get a job. And then at some point there may be an interest in entrepreneurism, and then how can we help bridge the gap between the academic landscape and the startup landscape? And there's quite a lot of opportunities coming out of academic institutions with IP, young entrepreneurs coming out of various programs like the Explore Academy, and they have ideas for new businesses. And how can we help bridge that gap, bring investors in to meet these organizations, these entrepreneurs, and make this happen? So why are we doing this? Well, if you look at the economics around artificial intelligence, fourth industrial revolution type technologies, robotics, automation, process automation, and all the other technologies that feed in around that, the cloud, IoT, smart city, et cetera, it is having a significant impact and on the economy. The survey here on the right hand side from McKinsey showing that the kinds of technologies which are going to have the greatest economic impact. Mobile internet, obviously they were talking about things like 5G, automation of knowledge, Internet of Things, cloud technology, advanced robotics, autonomous vehicles, genetics, etc. And then if you look at the left-hand side, why is it also important? It's also because this space is growing very quickly. At the moment, it's 50% compound annual growth, and a growing market is a sign that there's opportunity, there's money being spent in these markets and these technologies, and obviously business and governments are seeking to embrace these technologies. So these technologies are having big economic impact and they're rapidly growing. Obviously, there is a particular ethical debate around these technologies. If you look at the quote here from Stephen Hawking, clearly we may make a big leap in the use of artificial intelligence, but ultimately we don't want to create the Skynet scenario where we annihilate ourselves by letting this technology run wild. Clearly things like ethics, responsible deployment, policies around automation, autonomous decision making, these are very important things that we do need to think about, and there's plenty of people engaged in that debate in our community. The other reason why we're keen on this is that there's a big demand for skills in the industry right now. This is a slide from an executive presentation I went to at the end of last year by LinkedIn, part of Microsoft now, and this is some analysis of the fastest digital skills needed in the industry right now. And this is information for South Africa, but it broadly reads across the most countries. And if you look at the top sort of 3 or 5 categories there, artificial intelligence, data-driven decision making, they form a big part of what people are looking for. Data science obviously in there as well, fintech obviously big in our region as well. So there is a skills gap, and we talked about skills in the survey, which we'll come on to in a minute. So if we look at some statistics about where we were with our community in 2018, We launched our community officially January 2018, and the first AI Expo Africa was in September of that year. We got up to about just over 1,000 members. We had over 700 delegates registered for the show, and we had 275 companies attend the show, just over 60 speakers and 40 sponsors. So we were really pleased with that. These are some of the photos from the show in 2018. 2019, we grew again. By the time we delivered the show in September last year, we had almost 3,000 members. We had over 1,000 registered delegates, 370 plus companies attended. We had just over 100, I think we had 106 speakers, 55 sponsors. We had basically a packed show, and the feedback from the event was really good. Basically, people enjoyed the format that we put together. Buyers meeting suppliers, investors meeting startups. We had academic representation, and we had the universities presenting research which was applicable to industry and investment. We had several product launches at the show. The world launch of the Robo Cup in Africa occurred. So there was lots of things happening, and obviously this year we were on track to grow again. We've now surpassed 3,500 members. And we were planning to have our face-to-face show in September, but now we've moved that online with COVID. But we envisage through going on an online platform that will certainly exceed the numbers we had planned. It's just a case of educating people about what those opportunities are at the moment. So just a quick summary before we get into the survey about what AI Expo Africa 2020 online is going to look like. As I said, because of COVID, we've gone on to a platform called iVent, which basically allows us to create a digital twin of the show. So we have 4-track speaking program, we have a poster wall, we have sponsor booths where you can go and interact with vendors. So it's very much a similar, analogous of the face-to-face event. You come in to a virtual expo hall, and then you can wander around, go into the talks, meet the vendors, go and look at the posters. You can go into private, public networking spaces. And basically, it's as close to a face-to-face show as we can make it using available technology. This is not about putting on virtual goggles and AR, VR. It's nothing to do. We're just using plain old online technology that allows you to go and interact, ask questions, interact with people at booths, interact with people on the talks. And it's something obviously that allows us to open up the event to a much greater audience. If anyone on this webinar is interested, tickets are on sale now for delegates, and they're priced at 800 Rand. If you go to aixpoafrica.com, you can find the link to the ticket site. The other thing, just before we get into the survey results, just want to encourage people to go to AITV on YouTube and subscribe. We do quite a lot of interviews with people at the show, and we also do interviews with thought leaders, people driving the industry. So I encourage you to register, subscribe to AITV on YouTube. And also we launched in 2018 Synapse magazine, which is Africa's only AI data science trade magazine. It's on the digital platform Issue, and if you go into Issue, type in Synapse or AI Media, you'll find our magazine. It's basically a journal which is free to contribute to, it's free to read. We're trying to disrupt the media landscape here. There's no paywall, there's no subscription fee. You basically can read the content and get a feeling about what's going on in our region. So let's get on to the main part of the reason why we're all on this webinar today. And I'm just going to change screens here. Just give me 2 seconds. It's going to get into Google Chrome and the survey. So what I'm doing here, folks, is I'm giving you this is what the data is. This is the raw live survey. At the moment, we've had 51 responses. We're hoping to get to about 200 over the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks. So we get good representation across the industry. So if anybody else wants to contribute, please share a link to the survey. I'll email that out to everybody after the event. But since we've had pretty good representation so far, we've had broad industry input. We've had input from big companies, over 1,000 employees, right down to startup companies. And I'd certainly like to get more larger companies. We'd certainly like to have much more larger companies involved in the survey, just to sort of even out the playing field there. So what we wanted to show was what class of products are in most demand. And as we started this, after we got about 10 to 20 responses, we started to see a pattern. And the biggest category was big data analytics. That seems to be an area that is of most interest to our region at the moment. And if we look at the second highest category here, machine learning point solutions. So these are typically solutions which are either handcrafted, either in-house or using third-party input. And then after that, we've got cloud services. Here, broadly talking about things like adopting Azure, AWS, Google, and obviously those platforms themselves have a very broad machine learning, deep learning, AI, data analytics component to them. Then after that, chatbots. That was the next category that seems to be of most interest to respondents so far. Again, a lot of organizations I know have been experimenting with chatbots as a customer service interface, and obviously organizations that we have in our community, FinChatbot being a good example. Those are the kinds of technologies which organizations are experimenting with. Obviously RPA is a big category as well. I think one of the observations we made in our industry over the last 2 years is that a lot of organizations have started their automation and intelligent automation journey with RPA, and now they're starting to look at adding in machine learning solutions, or maybe integrating that with other processes. So I think that's an area that isn't going to go away, and it's probably going to grow as more companies adopt. And if we start to look at some of the other categories, deep learning point solutions, IoT, we have a lot of interest in people who've got devices instrumenting various structures like houses or factories, smart automation, smart city, and then that data feeding into other systems that then may, big data analytics, data streaming in real time. And then we've got some smaller categories here. A lot of these now are starting to get into the bespoke categories. So bespoke solutions which are done in-house, bespoke solutions which are done by third parties. So I think no massive surprise there to anyone who's been close to the industry at the moment for our region. And certainly if anyone's supplying products in these categories, certainly these top 5, top 6 are in big demand. So let's look at what people were spending. This is in US dollars. So we had about 30% of organizations are spending upwards of 100,000 US, and the biggest category here is $10 million plus. So I think, again, this will change over time as we get more larger companies responding. But nonetheless, we certainly have organizations here. If we look at, there's 16% of the respondents so far spending over $1 million US on these technologies. And obviously, as we get more larger companies involved, that pie chart's going to change. Then we also wanted to try and get a feel for what's going to happen over the next 12 to 24 months. Clearly, the impact on COVID, or the impact of COVID on the industry, is something we're also going to touch on in this survey. So it was interesting to see that people have budgeted significantly. Again, I think it probably maps broadly back onto some of the stats above, but you're looking at about 33% spending over $1 million plus over the next 24 months US dollars. Then about a third spending 100 to $1 million US dollars, and then the other 40% 100K or less. One thing I think any supplier is interested in understanding is how long does it take on average to procure some of these technologies? And again, this is just a rough kind of average. Well, I mean, the 25% said it depends on the complexity and scale, and I think that was a fairly obvious response, and we put that category in there because obviously procurement cycles vary. But certainly, if we look at the 6 to 12 month plus category, any startup or anybody involved in supplying these technologies, if you think anything is going to take less than 6 months, you're going to have to factor that into, or factor into your planning that it's going to take a lot longer than 6 months on average to deploy these technologies. So companies are still educating themselves about new technologies. They don't want to take much risk. The larger the company, the less risk they want to take. But certainly the indication here, we've got about 36% of organizations here taking anywhere between 6 to 12 months plus on their decision-making processes and procurement cycles to get these technologies in. 15% saying it takes less than 1 month. Yeah, interesting to understand what those technologies are. But again, the bulk here down 24%, it's 1 to 6 months minimum really to get these technologies in. So again, for any suppliers on this call, start thinking about that in terms of your own business plan. The other question we asked was, where are you on your deployment journey? So who's gone live, who's piloting, who hasn't gone live but planning to do so? And we've got some quite interesting results here. If you look at the live or just gone live category here, which sort of accounts for, what are we talking, 14, 34%. So about a good third of organizations surveyed have gone live or are going live with these technologies. Obviously here, 20% have gone live with good results. Some have gone live with mixed results, and obviously 6% going live just at the moment. So again, that's quite an interesting, I don't know whether people can hear me. I think I lost some of the audio there. Let me just go back to the dashboard. So that's quite an interesting result in terms of organizations that have gone live. But here we can see 27.5%, almost a third, are currently piloting. So I think that almost kind of one third split of they've gone live, going live, or currently piloting to go live. So again, quite a lot of activity in that space. And then if we look down here, again, probably, what are we talking here? 20, 37, 38%. So just over a third. They're not going live now, but they plan to in the next 12 to 24 months. So again, useful insights there. Broadly, let's call it a third, a quarter, a third, and then one respondent saying they've got no plan to. So I don't know who that was in terms of responding to this survey, but certainly people have gone live, people are going live, and there's a good third of yet to go live. So plenty of opportunity out there if you scale that up. The next phase of the report was really just to ask questions around people's readiness and maturity in terms of their own deployment mission. So here we were talking about the ranking of readiness to actually deploy these technologies. And we talked initially here about what's your current strategy and your vision. Where are you in your readiness for that? So I think most organizations feel broadly ready at a varying degree, mainly a 3, 4, and 5, 5 being most ready, 1 being the least ready. If we then map that across to readiness on people's skills, I think you can see straight away there's a shift towards being less ready. And again, I think that maps neatly back to what we've observed, that people finding organizations are struggling to find the right skills, or certainly recruiting to try and find the right skills to make some of these technologies work. As I said, back in the LinkedIn survey that was done here regionally, looking for data scientists, looking for people with RPA experience, developers who've got experience at operationalization of AI algorithms or solutions that have been crafted. So again, I think this was an area where we noticed there was a distinct shift to the left, where organizations in the people and skills department are feeling that they're less capable, less mature. The other important thing we wanted to focus on was getting a feel for where people were with privacy, data privacy and ethics. Again, I think we've got mixed results here. Broadly, people making sure that they are considering it. Scores here 4 and 5. Broadly, most organizations feeling that they're on top of things. But again, maybe some organizations feel that they've got some work to do on their data privacy and ethics strategy. And then we asked the question around process and technology maturity. So when you're wanting to embrace change in an organization, it invariably involves changing processes, and which are underpinned by technology. And here I think you can start to see a shift left a little bit. People not as ready as they should be or could be with technology and processes. And in my experience, people readiness and process readiness typically are the areas where organizations are the least capable or the least ready for some of these big changes which are coming. Let's say you automate all the processes in a bank. That's quite a disruptive activity, and that involves a lot of change with business processes and people who need training, or they have to be redeployed, maybe in some cases let go. Obviously, we're getting into that very interesting part of the debate around the impact of these technologies on recruitment and potentially retrenchment. And then the final question we asked in this kind of readiness section was, if you were to rank your overall readiness to adopt these technologies in your business, how would you rate your maturity to handle complex change? And again, I think we broadly can see a shift here that most organizations probably feel they're broadly capable, but obviously some organizations perhaps got some work to do. Again, no real surprises there, but again, it was just interesting to see what that pattern was. So let's now move on to perhaps some of those other ethical questions that I mentioned earlier on. We asked, do you see any ethical issues in deploying automated systems that rely on artificial intelligence in your business? And here we were really sort of asking them to think about, clearly these technologies may result in job losses. They may result in mistakes being made, particularly the faster you run these processes, the more automated they become. If you don't have a human in the loop, you're likely to make mistakes at scale. And obviously, what do you think about that? Some pretty interesting results here. I think apart from the people that say it's not applicable for what they do, you're looking at over a third accept that there are ethical issues about this new way of working, and that they have to manage it very, very carefully. And I think that's quite a reassuring piece of feedback. I think there was also a good third of people believing that clearly this is a natural change that we're going through, and there is going to be some consequences of that change. So there is some ethical considerations around this topic, but does that mean that we're going to have to let people go? Is that just purely an economic thing? But again, I think people acknowledging there that there is some impact, and there are going to be consequences. If we look at this thing, no, we have to adapt, and our business will suffer. So it's interesting that actually we're seeing responses here where potentially some people are thinking, okay, well, there clearly is a policy to put in place, but we have to adapt our business, otherwise it will suffer. So interesting debate. I think the ethics debate, ethics policies around automation are politically hot potato, and it's important that businesses give them due consideration. We then asked the question, where are you actually on in terms of deploying an ethics and privacy policy in respect of your deployment? So overwhelmingly, almost 60% here are drafting one as an integral part of the overall solution. So that's good news to hear. Clearly, I think with things, if you're an international company, things like GDPR, if you've got European activity, POPI here in South Africa, which I still don't think is fully enacted, but good to see that the vast majority of organizations are drafting one, or they already have one in place. So I think if you look at, yes, we already have one in place, that's almost 25%. So a good what are we talking? 70, 75, 78% here. Well, it's probably nearer 80% actually, saying that they're drafting one or they've got one in place. Small number of people saying that they feel they don't need one, which again, interesting. And some saying it's not relevant to actually what they do. But again, these are obviously in the minority here. We then asked the question, did you draft your policy in-house or did you get external help? So for those, 41% drafted in-house and 37% drafted with external help. So again, it's interesting that organizations are looking to third parties to help them with their ethics and privacy policies. I think that's good for any organizations on this call where you might be wanting to be able to assist organizations with their policies. So as COVID has made a big impact on us, we had to move our event to an online platform. We asked the question, has this COVID crisis impacted your current or planned 4IR spend? So 30 people saying no, it's business as usual. So in a way, that's very encouraging to hear. We've obviously seen here that some people delaying their plans by 12 months, and some here saying that they've actually scrapped their plans. So again, luckily, I guess, I mean, it's a small percentage, 6% and 4%. That's sort of 10% saying it's a significant or severe impact. But here, again, maybe some reassurance for anyone who's got a business that's being impacted at the moment. We're looking at about just under a third saying they've delayed plans by 6 months, and the other third saying they've delayed plans by 3 months. So I think people are waiting to see what's happening. They are putting things on hold. I know some vendors have said that they're not going to be attending meetings until end of June, July. We don't know what's going to happen with flights and gatherings. So again, people erring on the side of caution. 3 to 6 month delay seems to be something that resonates with most people. And again, anybody that's factoring that into their business plan, probably erring on the side of caution, just push everything left by 6 months, and that's probably a fair representative result from our survey. And then finally, we're getting into the last sort of couple of questions here. What's your overall sentiment towards the economic climate over the next 12 to 24 months? So, yep, some people are naturally pessimistic, as you'd expect. And then at the other end of that spectrum, we've got some people that are optimistic. But if we look at the middle ground, 40% are saying that they've got a pretty negative view, but they're hopeful. So, yep, this is going to impact us all. And then we've got to then look at how we dig ourselves out of COVID and move on and get back to a business as usual landscape. If we then look at the other two categories here, positive but cautious and neutral, well, okay, so we're looking at probably, again, another good third there of people saying, yeah, look, yeah, we're positive, but I guess these people are the realists. They're working on the fact that, yeah, we're positive, but we need to exhibit some caution. And again, I think if you're a realist about things and you've got a business plan that is sort of working on the basis of a sales perhaps shifting, organizations putting things on hold, that would probably be a realistic thing to do. So the other questions just really relate to education and training. That's more for a response for us and on which country do people come from. But I hope that's given you a quick flavour of what it is we are doing. In terms of questions, you can ask questions now. You can put a question down at the bottom here. We wanted to try and kind of keep this to about 30 minutes and then really answer any questions that come in there. And there is a little questions area that you can write questions in. One of the questions that comes in is, are you active in the rural agricultural sector my interest is bridging the gap on records and market access. We have had organisations in the agri sector in our community. Actually, at the show last year, there were people attending that did have agri-focused solutions. Obviously, it's a big sector here in our region, and yeah, I mean, the agri sector has a mix of technologies in it: remote sensing, IoT, smart devices, real-time big data analytics, drones. I mean, we had aerobotics at our show before. So yeah, we do have that community engaged with us, and yeah, it's something that is clearly a big part of the export market, certainly for South Africa and other African countries. And yeah, we welcome more. We had a PPCB, we had some of the wine growers at the show as well last year. So there's another question just come in here. Are you active in funding? Are you active in funding education? We do work with quite a few different partners. We have over 100 partners in our community that we work with, ranging from female-focused groups through to Data Science Nigeria, AI Kenya, Deep Learning Indaba, and we do work with providing young engineers with an opportunity to join the community for free. So for the past 2 years, we've put 800 young engineers and entrepreneurs through our free workshop program. They get access to the show for free as well. And we're going to be opening up the online event for 30 days after the live show on a free basis to young entrepreneurs, young engineers, students, so they can go to the show and actually enjoy a free education experience. They can go to the talks, and we'll be doing that through our partners. We don't fund education per se. We do fund a charity in kind called Starting Chance, where they help teach women to teach young kids from disadvantaged communities about basic ICT skills and knowledge. But we are working with various stakeholders to at least raise people's interest around opportunity in this space. So we do things in kind, and we do allocate some budget to allowing young engineers to join our show for free. We've got a lot of questions coming in here, which is good. Will there be an update session where we get more responses in the next few weeks? Good question. The answer is yes. As I say, this is a live survey. This was just an initial kind of give you a feel of what's going on. And yeah, it's a living survey that's going to run, as I say, we'd ideally like to let it run for the next two months. So if you would like to share the link to our survey, again, I'll email it to everybody after the show, after this webinar. Please share it if you're part of a industry body or a society or a meetup group. Just share the link to the survey, and then what we're going to do is collate everything into a final report. And anyone that took part in the survey gets a copy of the report. You also get a discount, 50% to come to the show to get a ticket. And we'll be presenting the survey at the show as well. Another question here, big one. You mentioned recruitment strategies are on the lips of most business leaders, and finding the right people will always be a challenge. It's going to be critical. What trends do you see in hiring going forward within the data science, machine learning, and AI space? So it's a good question. Well, the trends I've seen talking to large organizations, I mean, if we put COVID to one side, because I think obviously that's delayed some organizational plans to recruit. But I've seen that organizations in this space are actively recruiting. So I think there's been an impact on it. But the broad trend, I mean, the LinkedIn survey from last year, the analysis they shared really showed that the top 10 categories of jobs in demand right now are data science, automation, machine learning. The other interesting thing is that I think 62% of those, or 65% of those jobs were for South Africa, being issued in Joburg, and only 19% were being published for Cape Town. So again, I think that's an interesting trend. Whilst most people like the lifestyle of Cape Town, most of the jobs seem to be in this particular space in Joburg. I'm sure that'll change perhaps over time, but obviously most large organizations, most of the big banks, manufacturers, the miners, etc., service industries have all their headquarters there. So probably not a surprise, but again, certainly a trend. Another interesting trend is we're seeing a lot of a lot of activity places like Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Ghana, data science Nigeria running the largest educational program in Africa for young people. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in this space in our region. Next question. Gosh, a lot of questions. Were there any insights that LinkedIn shared in terms of their hiring forecasts within the they didn't show forecasts. It obviously seems like this is a popular question. So yeah, they didn't show hiring forecasts. They just sort of showed the current trend, but there was no kind of look forward thing there. Will you publish the survey results? Yeah, I think I've answered that question. Can you share a link with? Yeah, you can share. I'll email the link out if you want, and you can share that with your clients, and they will benefit from a discounted ticket and a copy of the report as well. So yeah, please do share it. Will we have access to the recording of this session? Yes, you will. It is being recorded, and I think you will get automatically sent a link to that. So I think that's all the questions. But yeah, just to recap, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us. This was just a brief headline view of what's going on with our survey, what we're doing in our industry. There is a handout here at the bottom in the handout section, which gives you, if you're interested in being a sponsor, getting involved in the online show, there's a PDF there that you can download for the current show that we're running in September. As I say, we've gone online. It's a bit of a brave new world for everyone. But we hope that you can join us and be part of the show. So I don't think we've got any more questions. So yeah, it just leaves me to say thanks very much for coming, everybody, and hope to see you all soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.